truth is very simple, very hard to find.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom D'Ambra. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to watch our program. Well, my friends, a tremendous amount has gone on since we had the opportunity to be with you last. But I want to start with one thing. 2 weeks ago, I rhetorically asked, whatever happened to Vermont? I moved to Vermont in 1985 from southern New England, Providence, Rhode Island area. And when I moved to Vermont, it was everything that I moved here for. But the encroachments of the government, the cost of government, the encroachments on the liberties that still existed in Vermont is incredible. And our latest example of this is the gun bill. So when I asked this question, I know a lot of real Vermonters, native Vermonters, because even though I've been here for over 30 years, I will never be, in the eyes of a Vermonter because I wasn't born here. I get it, I understand it, no problem with it. But when I rhetorically asked this question about whatever happened to Vermont, I know the real Vermonters that I just spoke of said, too many of you flatlanders moved up here. That's what happened to Vermont. That, with the mix of apathy in the general population of not just Vermont, but throughout the country for that matter, has created the situation that Vermonters now find themselves in. So a great example of that, my friends, is for the first time in the state's history. Now understand, Vermont was its own republic at one time. Vermont has incredible sovereign history. From battling New York and New Hampshire for land rights, the French and Indian War, Rogers Rangers, all of this, the founding era of this country, all of this. But the first anti-gun bill was passed by the Senate and the House, even though multiple open meeting laws were broken. Traitor Phil, the governor, signed off on it. So when you look at the people that voted for this in the Senate, I want you to see, this is going to complement exactly what I'm talking about. We had Ash. This is everyone who voted for the bill. Everybody in the Vermont Senate. Ash was from Framingham, Massachusetts. Iyer was from Quincy, Massachusetts. Blaitland was born in Germany, raised in New York. Baluth, New York City, New York. Bray, New Britain, Connecticut. Brooks, Washington, D.C. Campion, Albany, New York. Clarkson, Buffalo, New York. Cummings, Holliston, Massachusetts. Ingram, Savannah, Georgia. And Lyons, Auburn, New York. What does that tell you? It tells you that when these Vermonters, when I rhetorically asked that question and they looked back at me and said the problem is too many of you, being flatlanders, have come here, they're right. But I will tell you, I wasn't born in Vermont, but I got here as quickly as I can, and I have contributed to the community, and I have tried to educate everybody, not just in Vermont, but whatever reach I could get, or we could get, as to what is truly going on. So there is some real statistical facts about the answer to my rhetorical question. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish this. My apologies. McDonald was from Middleton, Connecticut. McCormick was from New York City, New York. Pearson was from Alberta, Canada. Paulina is from New Jersey, and Stroiken was from Queens, New York. Again, every single person that voted for this bill, none of them were Vermonters. Okay. Now, let's get into a real quick thing. I'm already behind, and I'm sorry on that. Local store told to remove military flags or face fines. A firestorm has been brewing down in Jacksonville, Florida over the last 2 days. At the center of the controversy is a power sports business that happens to cater to military veterans. The store, Jaguar Power Sports, flies flags from each of the military branches, plus a pair of American flags and Jacksonville Jaguar flags. According to city ordinances, the military flags are against code. Code. Remember the word code? C-O-D-E? What did I tell you? Anytime you hear the word code, the base of the word is coda, which means to be altered. It's Latin, to be altered secretly. Like we got to crack the code, remember that? And then anytime you hear the word code, you are under a commercial venue of law. Let us continue. Which is what led City Inspector Melinda Powers into this store on Monday. Surveillance video captured City Inspector Melinda Powers literally getting in the face of the customer at Jaguar Power Sports on Binding Boulevard. Employees told News 4Jax on Monday that she was so disruptive and disrespectful to the veteran, they asked her to leave. About noon on Monday, Powell went into the store and issued a written warning citation because she said the military flags flying on the roof were in violation of the city code. The rooftop display includes 2 United States flags, Jacksonville, and I already mentioned that to you. We catered to men and women, both retired and active military, so we took this personal. Now, folks, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. First of all, how is it that these laws got passed that you cannot display the banners of our military? Second of all, you see the attitude of these people? You see the attitude? These people are power hungry. Absolute power hungry. This woman, when you watch this video, she went in there like she literally was above these people. These people no longer realize or even think of it as that they are supposed to be serving us. Everything is flip-flop. I've told you about this before. The structure of our country in society, in its law, was God on top and the federal government on the bottom. Well, they have completely flip-flopped that. There was no international government at that point. They have flip-flopped it, folks. Now it's international, federal, and the people are at the very, God is at the very bottom next to the people. Let us continue. I want to do a couple of quotes for you first, and then we are going to get into some information. Okay, do you remember this quote from William Casey, former CIA director? We will know when our disinformation program is a complete success, when everything the American people believe is false. Do you remember that? That's important that you remember that, because I'm talking now about this strike that the United States did in Syria. Okay? They still have not presented any evidence at all, of this gas attack. None. Zero. Yet, there is evidence to be found. And ask yourself, as Rand Paul said, Assad is either the stupidest leader of any nation in the country, or this attack makes no sense for Assad to do this. And why is he saying this? Because Assad was winning. The Russians came in, stabilized the situation, went after our proxy war troops, ISIL, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, whatever you want to call them this week. Yes, I did say our, as Lieutenant General Michael Flynn has told us many, many times, the Obama administration funded, supplied, and trained Al-Qaeda, ISIS, ISIL, whatever you want to call it this week, okay? That's fact. That's why they had to get rid of them. So does it make sense to you that the situation's stable? Assad has said as soon as the situation is stable, he will step down. He doesn't actually want to be there anymore. So does it make sense that he's at the point of total victory, stabilizing the victors, getting our proxy war troops, our nihilists, our agitators out of Syria, securing the border? Russia was even making plans to withdraw out, folks. This is how close it was. But as we showed the film to you last week, the bankers couldn't have that because Syria is the second to last country that Wesley Clark spoke of, the 7 countries in 5 years the United States government is going to take down. And the last one left is who? Iran. Now you got to understand, Syria is not indebted to the international bankers. Syria does not let the international bankers control their money system. That's one of the main reasons, and neither does Iran. That's one of the main reasons why we are in Syria. So ask yourself, does it make sense that Assad would do this and attack civilians? What's the military gain? None. And now we find out from people like Nigel Farage that according to the OPCW and other organizations and other nations, that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, ISIL, whatever you want to call it this week, has been caught 52 times deploying chemical weapons. And all of them were produced in the United States or England. Some of the canisters were produced in Germany, but all of the toxins were produced in the United States or in England. So does this make sense to you? Well, it shouldn't. Here's what does make sense. Please read along with me. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. Listen to this. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That is against their interest. George Collins. Couldn't agree more. John Swinton, former longtime editor of the New York Post at the time, and this was at his retirement gala. Okay, this is about 1924. Listen to this. The business of journalists is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. He's speaking to everybody at his retirement gala, they're all in the media, the press here at this point, are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are the jumping jacks. They pull the strings and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. That's 1924. I know it says 1880. But this is actually from 1924. Think of that. The reason why 1880 is that's when you read the whole thing, his career, he started his career in 1880. Think of that. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men, and we are intellectual prostitutes. Who do you think the other men are? The bankers. Let us continue. Here's a man who knows quite a bit about the behind the scenes and the underlyings of government. This is Hunter S. Thompson. If I'd written all the truth that I knew for the past 10 years, about 600 people, including me, would be rotting in prison cells from Rio to Seattle today. Absolute truth is a very rare and dangerous commodity in the context of professional journalism. Do you think you're getting truth from the mainstream media? Why do you think they're trying to shut down what has become to be known as the alternative media? Because they can't control the dialect. They control the dialect, folks, with the mainstream media, the 501c3 churches, the indoctrination centers that you call the public school system. I call it the public fool system. That's their three main ways of daily controlling your thought process, your information, which avenue they want to take us down. Look at what this man has been in and out of it, folks. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But look at his words. He's telling you the truth. Let us continue. The media, the most powerful entity on earth, they have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. And that's power, because they control the minds of the masses. That's Malcolm X. Malcolm X, before he took the violent twist into his philosophy, which was wrong, and he lost followings from it, was that before he took that turn, whether it was in frustration or desperation, before he got to that point, though, he was very observant. He could do what they don't want, and that's subjectively have a process of critical thinking. They don't want you to be able to do that. Let us continue. This is Samuel Clemens. I know you know him as Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. Isn't that the truth? It's like someone might get taken at a card game or whatever, a project, a product, whatever. And you say to that person, oh, that guy was pulling cards, or you should take that thing back, or you paid too much for this. It's harder to convince them to do that than it was to fool them with the card trick or the product, the sleight of hand, or the information, whichever tool you use to fool them. It's more difficult to prove to them that they will accept it, because now a thing called pride gets in the way, or ego gets in the way. That's what he's saying right here. Let us continue. Another man who understood the dealings above and below the tables. This is General Douglas MacArthur. Our government has kept us in a perpetual state of fear. Let's stop right there. What did I tell you? The number one ingredient in that triangle that we described, called the Hegelian dialectic. And for those of you who have never seen the show before, the Hegelian dialectic is a very simple thing that is used every single day, multiple times. I see it used daily. And it's this. Bottom portion of the triangle. You create a crisis. Top part of the triangle. You get the emotional response you want from the people. Now, according to Hegel, you had to have fear in that equation. And if you could mix some anger in that equation also, even for the better. But fear is the dominant emotion in this equation. Look what Douglas MacArthur is telling you. Our government has kept us in a state of perpetual fear. Hegelian dialectic. So, crisis, emotional response from the people, fear, anger. Boom. Bring in the solution. The people, because of that fear and anger, will give up their liberties, they'll give up their rights, they won't ask any questions because of that emotional response from the crisis that you created and controlled. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. You have got to ask yourself, who benefits from these events? Let us continue. Our government has kept us in a perpetual state of fear, kept us in a continuous stampede of patriotic fever, with the cry of grave national emergency. Always there has been some terrible evil at home, or some monstrous foreign power that was going to gobble us up if we did not blindly rally behind it. Louis T. McFadden, who fought the bankers tooth and nail, former chairman of the Bank and Currency Committee, my apologies. It was a carefully contrived occurrence. International bankers sought to bring about a condition of despair so that they might emerge the rulers of us all. So what is the tool? What is the emotional response that's going to get, again, the solution? Which was to do what? To have a private for-profit, in this particular scenario, situation, to have a private for-profit international banking cabal take over the issuing power and the money system of the United States. You know it as the Federal Reserve. So what was the tool in that triangle? Despair. Let us continue. Napoleon Bonaparte. When a government is dependent upon bankers for money, they and not the leaders of the government control the situation. Since the hand that gives is above the hand that takes, money has no motherland. Financiers are without patriotism and without decency. Their sole objective is gain. Now, their sole objective is gain, and not just money, but power. They've got all the property, folks. You don't own anything. Nothing. Zero. You're bonded. You got a birth certificate, you're bonded. We've done multiple shows on all this. Senate Document 43. I don't have time to get into it all. You know this if you've been watching this program. You've been declared the enemy by the United States government. Trading with the Enemies Act, 1933, the definition of enemy. Citizens of the United States or those under the jurisdiction of the United States. Who controls everything here, folks? Not they and not the leaders of the government control the situation. What is our situation right now? We're in despair and fear, aren't we? Another thing Napoleon Bonaparte said, one of his great quotes was, "History is agreed upon lies by the victors." It's true. Look at the American Civil War. Look at the Civil War in Syria. It's not a civil war, folks. The Syrian people weren't fighting amongst themselves. These were proxy invaders brought in by the international bankers, financed by you and I, through the Insolvent Corporation USA, Inc., for the international bankers, into Syria, into Iraq, into Yemen, into Sudan, into Libya, and now Syria, and then Iran. Let us continue. This is from Eric Blair. I know his pen name is George Orwell. The further a society drifts from the truth, the more it will hate those that speak it. Okay. So let's talk about evidence now. Are we ready? This was the day before Trump launches. It's gone from 107 to 123 missiles, depending who you're reading. Pentagon admits no evidence of chemical attack in Syria, relying on social media. Really? You admittedly got over 2,400 troops in Syria. You've got drones, satellite. You've got aerial reconnaissance. You've got human on the ground, human intelligence, on the ground, at the scene. And yet, the Pentagon has zero evidence of a gas attack, and even after our attack, still has not presented any evidence at all to any international community, not even to the American people. Why? We're going to find out. We're going to find out. Secretary of Defense James Mattis told lawmakers in the U.S. Thursday that the Pentagon does not have any evidence that the chlorine or sarin were used in the Syrian city of Douma. Mattis went on to say that the majority of the claims were coming from mainstream media reports and social media posts. Really? We came that close, and still the process is going on. Wars do not just start and go like turning on a car, my friends. Wars are created incrementally. And if you want to go to war with somebody, you put nihilists, you put agent provocateurs in the country. You try to reduce the purchasing power of their currency. You try to cause infrastructure chaos. You try to cause social chaos. You try to put a propaganda war against them in the information chaos. You create propaganda. You create lies. You create crisis. It's all disinformation and delusion. But yet, only hours before the United States Pentagon says, sorry folks, we got no evidence at all. Let us continue. Red Crescent says, no evidence of chemical attack in Syria's Douma. The Syrian Arab Red Crescent, that's like the Red Cross, my friend, statement was reported, and at the time we had no reason to believe it was not true. Subsequent questions have emerged, however, and the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent is saying that they are unaware of such a statement ever been issued by the Syrian branch. They further say that the Syrian Red Crescent was shut down in Douma. The Syrian Red Crescent issued a statement dismissing the allegations of a weekend chemical attack in the city of Douma. The statement insisted that medical personnel in the city have found no evidence of any such attack taking place. The Syrian Red Crescent said their hospital in Douma received 6 patients complaining of respiratory problems, but said they do not have any physical problems at all connected to any chemical agents that might have been exposed. Folks, for the sake of time, I'm going to stop here. But the other thing I want to get into at the very bottom of this article, my own notes, not the article, was that the only people who were claiming there was a gas attack was an organization called the White Helmets. Well, I did a lot of research on the White Helmets. The White Helmets, my friends, are an MI6 funded agency. And if you don't know who MI6 and MI5 are, they are the CIA of the British intelligence. There you go. So let's just back this up. We've got Russia, Syria saying no chemical attack, and Iran also, no chemical attack. But Russia and Syria, people on the ground. Russia taking evidence now to the UN to qualify no attack. You've got international organizations saying no chemical attack, the Red Crescent. You've got the hospitals in Douma, physicians on record saying no attack, not no attack, no chemical attack. So the only thing we've got going is a mainstream media that's been caught lying to us and being nothing but a spokesman for the international bankers, and an organization that is funded, which means it's controlled by British intelligence. Everybody else is saying no evidence of chemical weapons or a chemical attack. So I did some more research on this, and about 4 o'clock this morning, someone that I have been following and have a lot of faith, and I give credence to his reports. Robert Fisk. I'm just going to, for the sake of time, I got to read quick, folks, I'm sorry. Robert Fisk's bombshell first-hand account for the UK Independent runs contrary to claims circulating in major international presses concerning what happened just over a week ago on April 7th in the Syrian suburb of Douma outside Damascus. Not only has the veteran British journalist found no evidence of a mass chemical attack, but he's encountered multiple local eyewitnesses who experienced the chaos of that night, but who say the gas attack never happened. Fisk is the first Western journalist to reach and report from the site of the alleged chemical weapons act, widely blamed on Assad's forces. Writing from Douma and eastern Ghouta, Fisk was interviewed, a Syrian doctor who works at the hospital, shown in one of the well-known videos purports to depict victims of the chemical attack. The Independent Middle East correspondent Robert Fisk is under miles of tunnels hacked beneath Douma by prisoners of the Syrian rebels. Do you understand that, folks? The Syrian rebels were the people that we financed and put there and supported with airstrikes and military personnel and intelligence. Do you understand this? For the sake of time, I don't want to get into this whole thing. Anyway, what he did find, Fisk said he was able to walk around and investigate newly liberated Douma. Liberated Douma, folks, was because the Syrian forces had liberated it from ISIS and ISIL and Al-Qaeda, like I say, whatever you want to call it this week. Just understand, folks, when you hear the words Al-Qaeda, ISIL, ISIS, understand these are our proxy mercenaries. That's what they are. I know we call them a nice political word today. We call them contractors. Folks, a contractor works on a house, works on a building, hangs drywall, electrical, plumbing. That's a contractor. Mercenaries fight for money. That's what we have in Syria. Then that's what we put in Iraq. That's what we put in Libya, the Sudan, Yemen, Mali, and Africa. That's what we do. Okay, so Fisk was able to walk and investigate the newly liberated Duma without Syrian government or Russian minders because he was reporting from inside Syria. This is a story of a town called Duma, a ravaged, stinking place of smashed apartments, blah, 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 all the rest of it. Now, what I'm just going to get into, folks, for the sake of time, is that what he has discovered is that the United States that night had done a massive air raid in the area. But the mainstream media in the United States and the international mainstream media reports that, oh, international inspectors can't get to the site of the chemical attack. Why? Because the infrastructure is destroyed by the raid that night of U.S. air power. That's right. We destroyed evidence with our bombs. Just like Waco, which the anniversary is today, when the government murdered women, innocent women, children, and men with no court case, no trial, no jury, no jurisprudence followed, nothing, murdered. What'd they do? They burnt the place to the ground. And then whatever evidence was left, they bleached it, destroying all evidence. Look it up. You want to watch an interesting documentary on that, folks? Go online. It's online. We've shown it to you multiple times. It's called Waco, New Revelations. Waco, New Revelations. Watch that. Okay. So, we have multiple countries. We've got international medical benevolent organizations. We've got Russia, Syria, bringing evidence to the UN, no gas attack. We've got fake footage of these people purportedly having a gas attack. We have people, Robert Fisk, with incredible credibility, saying no gas attack. But when you read the whole thing, he gets into how the white helmets came into a hospital yelling gas, 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 and people started throwing water on themselves. What these people were having problems breathing from, the six that he speaks of when you read the article, was they were in the tunnels. And when the United States air raided and bombed that night, with what has been purported, there were 20 airstrikes done in Syria that night by U.S. forces. They won't say where, but they'll admit there was 20 of them. What they're having a hard time from, my friends, is they're in tunnels. And as the bombs are going off above, they can't breathe from all the particles. So they had respiratory issues. When you read the medical reports from these patients, there is a condition of hypoxia. Hypoxia is a state of reduced oxygen levels. Hypoxia. So what did we bomb at these sites with all our cruise missiles and everything else, huh? Oh, by the way, folks, Syria and Russia are claiming that Syrian forces, without using the S-300s, shot down 71 at that time of the 103 missiles that were fired. And that, they didn't even use the Russian sophisticated 400s or S-300s. Think of that. So, what do people on the ground say we did hit in this strike? Excuse me. This is written by Rachel Blevins. Scientist debunks U.S. claims, releases video evidence, U.S. bombed, listen to me, Syrian cancer research facility. The United States launched around 120 missiles targeting the Syrian government on Friday, and as reports of the damage surfaced, the evidence is showing that while the United States is bragging that the attack hit a chemical weapons facility, it actually destroyed a cancer research center. The attack launched by the United States, the United Kingdom, and France has reduced the Pharmaceutical and Chemical Industries Research Institute in Basay to rubble, according to a report from the Syrian Arabian news agencies, which noted that the facility use centered on preparing the chemical compositions for cancer drugs and conducting chemical analysis of the materials entering Syria, which are used in pharmaceutical and food industries. Scientist Saeed Saeed, head of the Institution for Development of Pharmaceutical and Chemical Industries, said that the facility was used by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons in 2013, and it is now being used as a research center for the pharmaceutical products because sanctions from the Western countries that are bombing Syria have resulted in a shortage of medication. Since the Syrian crisis broke out, anyway, folks, I have to stop. The Syrian country has been short of all kinds of medicines. They get into all that, and then they get into the claims from the Syrian government that they shot down 71 of the missiles. Okay, I'm running out of time. So, what else do we know from witnesses on the ground and international organizations? Headline, this is, again, written by Rachel Blevins. It's not terrorism when we do it. Syrians report U.S. use of chemical weapons on a town of over 200,000. The outrage and empathy on behalf of the civilians in Syria that was expressed by politicians and media personalities alike when they found an opportunity to blame a chemical attack on Assad's government was a distant memory this week. Instead, reports that the U.S.-backed coalition dropped a cluster of airstrikes containing illegal chemicals on a city housing 200,000 people was almost completely ignored by the Western media. U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, how do you like that name, Democratic, broke into the Islamic State-held city of Raqqa for the first time on Tuesday. While the populist outlets such as Reuters reported that as artillery and coalition aircraft pounded targets in the city, SDF fighters moved in small groups into the district. That was some key aspects they appear to have leave out. International outlets and witnesses on Twitter noted that some of the airstrikes resembled cluster bombs of white phosphorus. Now, white phosphorus, my friends, now, you ask any veteran of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, ask any one of them. Ask them about Willie Peter. That is the name, the slang name, the nickname given to white phosphorus by the troops that were in Southeast Asia. Willie Peter. Willie Peter is so nasty that it was outlawed in 1980. It was outlawed in 1980, protocols on incendiary weapons. Think about that. It is actually a statute listed in the International Criminal Court as a war crime. I want you to think of this, folks. If it was not for the restraint of Vladimir Putin, who is preparing his people for nuclear war. Yes, they are. We told you about the drill they did last summer with millions and millions of Russians involved. We have told you how they've upgraded their civil defense. The United States has no civil defense. We have told you how various Chinese military and civilian leadership have warned the Chinese people that, quote unquote, I'm not paraphrasing here, quote unquote, war with the Chinese is inevitable. I'm sorry, folks. War with the Americans, this is the Chinese speaking, is inevitable. We have Russia preparing for nuclear war. We have the United States moving thousands of troops along the Ukrainian border. We have Russia moving 77,000 troops to the Ukrainian border. We have a situation, folks, that the world has never been so close to MAD, mutual assured destruction. And if you think this is a game, you're wrong. This is for real, folks. This happened just days ago. This is written by a gentleman by the name of Paul Joseph Watson. China stages last-minute live fire drill and show of support for Russia. One of the objectives of China's last-minute live fire drill, now listen where it was, in the Taiwan Strait was used to send a message of support to Russia in the face of increasing tensions over Syria with the United States, according to international experts. The drill, which included the Liang Carrier Strike Group and was the first in the region in over 3 years, was primarily met as an invasion threat against Taiwan, but that was not its only intention. A close source of the People's Liberation Army Navy told the South China Morning Post the exercise was also intended to communicate Beijing's support for Moscow in the face of U.S. threats. Folks, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to tell you how big this drill was, actually. I'll tell you how big it was. It was the biggest military action that China has taken in over 600 years. And for those of you that studied your history of the Pacific, that would have been when China tried to invade Japan, as they went island hopping and they finally got to Honshu, which is the main island of Japan, which is consisted of 33,000 islands. That's where the term kamikaze became famous, because as the Chinese fleet approached the coast of Japan, a typhoon, you know it as a hurricane, came in and destroyed the fleet. And how was it when they went back and looked at what happened through computer analysis, they discovered that the ships, of course, were made with inscripted labor, slave labor, and there was no craftsmanship. So as the main beams for the posts for the sails started taking a beating that were fastened to the keels and all, the shoddy workmanship broke, became loose, and the ships went to the bottom. The word kamikaze means divine wind, my friends. That's where that came from. You understand 600 years of military action, to include world wars, rebellion, England going in there during 2 opium wars. England went into China twice to control the opium trade. Just like the United States went into Southeast Asia to control the opium or heroin trade, the poppy plants. Just like the United States when we went into Afghanistan, the second area we went to was what? The Golden Crescent, where the largest area of poppy is produced. You see, folks, the Taliban, them awful, evil Taliban, had outlawed the growing of poppy for 14 years. The CIA and Mossad were losing billions of dollars in black ops money. We go into Afghanistan, within a year, there is a complete heroin epidemic in this country that continues to today. Why? Because the CIA and the U.S. military is still shipping the heroin into this country. Folks, we reported to you how Russia, back in, I think it was March 18th, was reporting that their intelligence had that they were starting to form, they being ISIL, our agent provocateurs in Syria, to create a false flag chemical attack. That was March 18th. Because I remember it was the day after St. Paddy's Day. April 7th, what happens? We launch an airstrike on evidence that is yet to be presented by the United States. Yet all this other evidence presented by government, non-government, and international, national, private, and corporate, and benevolent organizations providing evidence of no chemical attack in Syria. Some may say that Trump is providing a Machiavellian move here, and that may be. That may be. But the possible crisis that would come forth if Putin ever decides that the United States government is nothing more than a bunch of sycophants, then he may decide, as he said last week, Russia has now put the first strike option back on the table. Folks, if there is a World War III, your children will not have to read of it to learn of it. And all of it, history will show, has been put forth and brought to you by lies. My friends, we're going to close to complement everything we've talked about here with two lies that put us into wars from 1964 to 1975, and then from 2001 to today. Never mind, from 1991, I apologize, from 1991 to today. All lies. So we're going to present this to you, we're going to close with that, and we're going to close in thanking you for watching our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, manifest kindness to your fellow man, and we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. Watch these two videos and see if you remember the lies. Thank you, folks, for watching.
On August 2nd, the destroyer Maddox reported it was attacked by a North Vietnamese patrol boat. It was an act of aggression against us. We were in international waters. I sent officials from the Defense Department out, and we recovered pieces of North Vietnamese shells that were clearly identified as North Vietnamese shells from the deck of the Maddox. So there was no question in my mind that it had occurred. But in any event, we didn't respond. Two days later, the Maddox and the Turner Joy, two destroyers, reported they were attacked.
Where are these torpedoes coming from? Well, we don't know. Presumably from these unidentified craft.
There were sonar soundings, torpedoes had been detected, other indications of attack from patrol boats. We spent about 10 hours that day trying to find out what in the hell had happened. At one point, the commander of the ship said, "We're not certain of the attack." Another point, they said, "Yes, we're absolutely positive." And then finally, late in the day, Admiral Sharp said, "Yes, we're certain it happened." So I reported this to Johnson, and as a result, there were bombing attacks on targets in North Vietnam. Johnson said, "We may have to escalate. I'm not going to do it without congressional authority." And he put forward a resolution, the language of which gave complete authority to the president to take the nation to war. The Tonkin Gulf Resolution. Now, let me go back to the August 4th attack.
Well, there apparently been at least 9 torpedoes in the water. All missed.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Wait a minute now. I'm not so sure about this number of engaged.
Right.
We'd have to check it out here. He said many of the reported contacts and torpedoes fired appear doubtful. Freak weather effects on radar and overeager sonarmen may have accounted for many reports.
Okay, well, I'll tell Mr. McNamara this.
That's the best I can give you, Dave. Sorry. It does appear now that a lot of these torpedo attacks were from the sonar man, you see. And they get keyed up to a thing like this. Everything they hear on the sonar is a torpedo.
You're pretty sure there was a torpedo attack then?
Oh, no doubt about that, I think. No doubt about that.
No, it was just confusion. And events afterwards showed that our judgment that we'd been attacked that day was wrong. It didn't happen.
Thank you very much. Our final witness is also using an assumed name, and again we ask our friends in the media to respect the need for her to protect her family. And we finally call on Naira to testify.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Naira, and I just came out of Kuwait. My mother and I were in Kuwait on August 2nd for a peaceful summer holiday. My older sister had a baby on July 29th, and we wanted to spend some time in Kuwait with her. I only pray that none of my 10th grade classmates had a summer vacation like I did. I may have wished sometime that I could be an adult, that I could grow up quickly. What I saw happen to the children of Kuwait and to my country has changed my life forever. It has changed the life of all Kuwaitis, young and old. We are children no more. My sister, with my 5-day-old nephew, traveled across the desert to safety. There was no milk available for the baby in Kuwait. They barely escaped when their car was stuck in the desert sand, and help came from Saudi Arabia. I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew, who, if born premature, might have died that day as well. After I left the hospital, some of my friends and I distributed flyers condemning the Iraqi invasion until we were warned we might be killed if the Iraqis saw us. The Iraqis have destroyed everything in Kuwait. They stripped the supermarkets of food, the pharmacies of medicine, the factories of medical supplies, ransacked our houses, and tortured neighbors and friends. I saw and talked to a friend of mine after his torture and released by the Iraqis. He is 22, but he looked as though he could have been an old man. The Iraqis dunked his head into a swimming pool until he almost drowned. They pulled out his fingernails and applied electric shock to sensitive private parts of his body. He was lucky to survive. If an Iraqi soldier was found dead in a neighborhood, they burned to the ground all the houses in the general vicinity and would not let firefighters come until only ash and rubble was left. The Iraqis were making fun of President Bush and verbally and physically abusing my family and me on our way out of Kuwait. We only did so because life in Kuwait became unbearable. They have forced us to hide, burn, or destroy everything identifying our country and our government. I want to emphasize that Kuwait is our mother and the Emir our father. We repeated this on the roofs of our houses in Kuwait until the Iraqis began shooting at us. And we shall repeat it again. I am glad I am 15, old enough to remember Kuwait before Saddam Hussein destroyed it, and young enough to rebuild it. Thank you.
Naira, thank you.
Got to read between the lines. Got to read between the lines. Well, the truth is very simple, find.